Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Step Into the Pivot. We're so happy to have you here again, listening to another amazing episode with a great guest. And I'm super excited to hear your story. So, welcome to Nina Greenberg.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm just so excited about what you guys are building together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We're trying to just provide we've all have those pivots in life. We all have stuff going on, whatever that looks like for us. So that's why this is really important. So thank you for saying that. Evie, I'm going to let you go a little deeper. So it's all yours.
Hey Nina, hi friend. Welcome to the
Hello.
show. It's so great to have you here. We are really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you about you personally. And I love that part because you are such a mission-driven, values-driven
Mhm.
individual. We serve together on the board of Sana Africa, and we when we get together, we always talk about the girls. We talk about how can we help. We have our wonderful colleagues and partners and friends who are all focused on the big mission. And I'll let you, if you want to, at some point in the show, as it becomes, part of your story, say a few words about it. We have another episode with Alison Nakamura Netter, who also spoke to us about her own experiences. So I know that thinking about other people is basically, what makes you tick and what defines you. But this is the time when you are not in the hot seat, but in the hopefully a comfortable seat of being the focus of all our attention because you've had a really big life. You are so incredibly role modeling something that in the industry that Teresa and I come from, the retirement industry, you are someone who was able to achieve something that is very regularly talked about, thought about, discussed as a like, okay, the unicorn. Is it possible to retire early, really sustainably, juicily, and then still keep yourself in the game of, how can I help? What else is there for me in my life? And here you are. So I know that this may not be the pivot that you would highlight for us, but it's something that I wanted to bring up because a lot of our listeners do come from financial services industry and retirement services industry in particular. And so for them, like, there she is. We found her, someone who's actually done it intentionally. And on that note, please tell us more about yourself and your journey, and particularly experiences that shaped you. What is a pivot, or maybe a series of pivots that you would say, really transformed your life? And then we can take it from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, I was thinking about this a little bit before we got together today because while retirement doesn't feel like a huge pivot for me, it's because I've been thinking about it since I started working. And that is something that I would say really strongly, I would encourage all of your listeners to think about is you're literally never too young to start thinking about it. I'm lucky in that I had parents who gave me financial literacy really early. As soon as I started making the smallest amount of money, which I don't want to scare anybody, was $9,500 a year, my dad was like, listen, you can do something called a Roth IRA. This is the amount you can put into it. I think at that time it was like $1,000 a year. And he's like, I know you're only making that much money, but you also have a grant as a graduate student. And so I highly encourage you to put it all in, maximize it. And at the time I remember thinking like, I don't know any better. And so my parents told me to do that. And I crafted the size of my life around the amount of money that I had rather than around the amount of money I wish I had, right? And so part of it is like starting early was really key. And then part of sort of the big pivot for me started really early well, I think it's early, when I was in my early 30s and I realized that my first career was not the career I wanted to be my last career, and I had no idea what I wanted to do next. Um, but I told my sweetie I was ready to be done with this career, and my sweetie went and got a job immediately, many states away, where we were aiming at, which was New York. And I thought, well, I don't know what to do. And so, again, like family, I called an uncle who it turns out now, if I look at it, he actually has been an institutional psychologist for many, many years, but I didn't know what he did for a living. I just knew he talked to people about their lives. And he set me up with a coach. And I thought, as one does when one is young, that what would happen is that I'd talk to this coach, and the coach would be like, all right, you should be a mailman, or you should be a taxi driver, or, there would be like a career that was handed to me as the next thing I should do. And instead, what she did is she made me work on what my values were, really identifying what are the three things that make me happy in life, and therefore would be provide the structure for what my next career would be. And so meeting her was an enormous pivot for me because I stopped thinking about the world in kind of the defined boxes that I had for myself. And you have a PhD in English, you think the only thing you can do is be an English professor, which is what I was. And instead, I realized, oh, at the time I thought I loved to write. What I meant was I loved to create, but that was my type of creating. I love to help people grow. So that was number two. And I love to solve a problem. And it doesn't matter what kind of problem. It could be a jigsaw puzzle, or it could be a huge, it turns out, business problem. And so being armed with that and having quit my job, which I did at the end of the school year, which is why my sweetie left first to go find that next job. Um, I came back to New York not knowing what I would do, but I was armed with these three core values, which have turned out, I've tried them on many different times since I was 33, and they have remained true to this day and helped me choose a random profession that came at me as an opportunity, advertising in the healthcare space, and help me make decisions just sort of up and down throughout my life.
So I want to definitely talk about your three core values because I think that's important. But I want to go back first to your
Yeah,
whole thing about saving because that is something you are so lucky that you had that amazing advice from your parents because
totally.
so many of us didn't have it and so many of us even still people don't want to talk about money and I do think it really is one of the big things that's missing, especially with women, because there's times they're out of the workforce where they have babies, whatever, right? Whatever that looks like, and
Sure.
that doesn't really matter. But just even that is always my encouragement, right? And I do a lot of work with junior achievement, and like one of their things is always make sure you save as part of
Yeah.
your budget,
Yeah.
right? Like, and it's totally true. It's something we talk about, and think how much better that looks at the end because I've told the story about how when I was selling my business and I was terminating the 401k plan for my business, and I told my husband how much is in my 401k, he's like, "Whoa, what?" And I was like, "You do know that's what I did, but like, you have no idea that's how much was in like you
Right.
forget that over 25 or 30 or 40 years,
Yeah.
that's a significant piece of your retirement." So I wanted to spend just a moment highlighting
Please.
that, but I would love to talk more about the core values because I think that's really a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
Totally. You said the word maximize, so that was really cool. So if I'm looking at like what was your dad teaching you, to maximize the opportunity. I also noticed when you talk about that moment with him when he is sitting you down and he's saying, "Listen, here's a good idea." And also knowing a little bit behind the scenes about your relationship with your dad, there's so much love in how he is talking to you. So I think that a lot of times in a family members, we can share with each other great ideas, the tone with which we're coming at it, or the general like scarcity mindset of like, Nina, I gotta shake you into reality
Right.
and you
Right.
have to question whether that would have had the same effect on you, you know but there's just so much love in your tone as you're telling us about his
Ah,
tone encouraging you, right? And that's just so lovely. Also, just sending him a lot of love right now. And I also want us to highlight that beautiful phrase you said, that you crafted the life around the money that you had, right?
mm-hmm. Right.
How cool
Which
is
is
that?
it is not a natural thing for Americans, at least, at all.
Yes.
That is not how we're taught to behave. And it's not like my parents told me to do that, but I also very much learned from just watching them. And my mother, who was Filipina, she grew up in a culture where women of her class, at the time, there were two classes in the Philippines, upper and lower. There was no middle class. And in her upper class, women were expected to get a graduate degree and to work. And so she came into this country with an attitude that was very different than you saw in the 60s in the US. And she also was always the one who made more money. And she didn't say it very often. She probably said it to me twice before I was, in my 40s. But it was really clear that it was critical if I was going to grow up and be in a straight relationship, that I wanted to be the one, like my mother, who was making more money. We all did well. But I think that mm, for my generation, a lot of us kind of got the message from our culture that we should step back as women. And that is not the the message that I was given. And I think that that was really important. And then again, like they were not people who had a second house, even though they could have afforded it. They didn't have fancy cars, even though they could afford it. And they kind of made it about that's a little tacky, but I don't think it was really tacky alone that had them living that way. And so, yeah, I also just felt like I'm gonna craft a life as big as it can be within the finances that I have because I do not want to be working when I'm 60.
Right. And
Yeah.
people don't talk about it either, right? Like,
Right. Right.
for your parents to talk to you about it, I think is
Yeah.
big, right? Because that doesn't happen. But I also think that I think one of the things is that couples don't talk about it,
Yeah.
right? Like they really don't. I have discovered that greatly, like with some of the
Yeah.
younger people I work with, that they do not talk about that and they need to because they need to be on the same page and have the same goal and what's our are you paying off a credit card? Maybe you have. Are you paying off
Right.
student loans? Are you having your 3 months of save? Whatever that looks like. And are you saving for retirement? Right? It's all those things have to work together. So yeah, I love this conversation. But Eva, I want to make sure we talk about her core values
Yeah,
because
I
I
think what you're saying here is going to connect directly to the values because, let's go there. I just want to go back to crafting the life and then you say as big as it can be, right? Because I think a lot of us then will hear something like, okay, I got to be realistic about how much money we have and what that means. Next thing you know, you find yourself in scarcity mindset, and then
Yes.
you are not
Yeah.
actually maximizing the opportunities that you have with the money that you have, like
Yeah.
the example that you give at the beginning. And I'm going to keep listening for like, can we back into some of these, attitudes and the principles from your values? So let's go over it again. So the first one, how would you summarize it if it was a noun? If it was an idea, a concept? You
Value
can
in
tell us
terms of
again. Yeah.
values,
Mm-hmm.
creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And a long way of saying that is I bore really easily. And so things need to be not the same for me. And it was really important to realize that quickly. So, and I like to create. In fact, this morning, I went and took a class in jewelry making and made this ring, which I think is very cute, by the
Whoa.
way.
very
But
cool.
just like it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter what kind of creating, and rearranging a bookcase could count as creativity one day also. So creativity, definitely
Creativity.
critical. Yeah.
Okay. Second.
Um, the second one is, um, I guess teaching. I mean, helping other people grow. And success in that really being when they grow past you or in a way that they couldn't imagine and you could imagine for them anything, but they found it themselves. So really, I think teaching or helping other people grow, or maybe it's empowering other people. I'm not. pick one of those, but
Yeah, as someone who's been on the receiving end of your teaching, I actually like quite specifically not too long ago asked you to teach me a book. You
yeah.
know content of a really important book, and it was, and I asked you, can you please, share with me your lessons learned? So I would also say that what that looks like to me as someone who knows you is sharing knowledge.
Mm,
So like you have the knowledge, you have the wisdom, you figured something out, like that book from start to finish, and then you turn it around and you say, I figured something out. Let me tell you so
mm.
that I can make your life easier. There's both like service and, knowledge sharing, wisdom sharing, so empowerment like through teaching.
Yeah, I love that actually. And as somebody who works with a lot of women to
Yeah.
kind of do what you say, right? That's what I try to get them to do is they have like sometimes we have to figure that out for ourselves, right? I could probably tell them,
100%.
but I want them to figure it out for themselves, right? So I love that term empowerment.
Most of the people that I work with or have worked with in, over many, many years in terms of helping them grow have more of a confidence issue than anything else. And
For
if you
sure.
can take away the thing that's in their way, it even if especially actually those like me who were the most brash, were probably the moments where I was the most not confident. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I think, that's one way to empower, but yep.
Absolutely true. Okay, what's the third?
And then
Right.
the third for me is I love to solve a problem. I love the people at work used to bring into me their necklaces with the teeny tiny knots because they knew that even though I was their name big title here, I didn't care the size of the problem. And I'm just as happy to like pick that apart and solve it. So satisfying as help figure out what the strategic tenure plan is for a company, which is also so much fun. So yeah, give me a problem.
Awesome. I love
Yeah,
it.
I've seen you also then, like kind of you de-emphasize the focus on the problem. You make it more like a solution
Mm,
oriented situation. So it's like you're like, okay, problem, situation. What's the situation in front of us? And then,
yeah.
one step at a time, it's like let's move this over here and this over there and this over there. So I love that. And the combination is amazing, right? So
It's fun.
because it is this trifecta, right? That's the secret sauce. So creatively finding solutions to situations, and then you share the knowledge, or you
Mhm.
learn something, then you apply it. Yeah. So can you tell us about some other maybe moments in your life, or perhaps we can go back to the career change, or maybe some of the more recent pivots that you've been through, where you still find yourself like you utilizing these values to essentially help yourself?
Um, so my friend Gail has had this wonderful father who recently passed away, and he had a little saying all the time, better lucky than smart. And when I retired, actually, I realized literally 3 minutes before my so-called party at work that they were going to look at me and expect me to say something. And I don't know why I hadn't thought about it. I was just so honored that they were making this party. And I immediately thought of Gail's dad because I think in so many ways, recognizing a moment where you're lucky and you haven't necessarily planned for something, but like at that job that I landed in, better lucky than smart. I was just super lucky. A friend of mine knew that I did not know what my next job was and offered me a 10-day freelance job, and it turned into the next career. Amazing people walk in for informational interviews where they know somebody that I know that blah, 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 and we're basically all doing a favor for somebody's mother or father, right? And so a random person walks in who has no intention of working at the job that you're working at and that you have no intention of hiring, and you click, better lucky than smart. There's a lucky moment. See it in that moment and pull them in. So I feel like it's not that I have one particular moment to say as much as I've realized over time that that spidey sense of something good is happening here is really important. And there's so many ways you can logic yourself out of an opportunity. A moment to pivot often just becomes, for me, a moment where I said yes when I didn't really want to, but you know, once I was in it, my mother taught me to be polite, and so I was polite for long enough to recognize sometimes it's only 2 minutes. Oh, this is a good moment. This is a great person. Let's like learn more.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm not answering the question, but I
No,
feel
no,
You
I
totally
think
strongly
are.
about it.
you are. I
Yeah,
think you are. And I think that honestly, it's about, right? Like it's about us listening to what the universe is saying, our mind, our body, our spirit, right? Whatever that looks like. And, and not being like having that courage, right? It's courage. It's, Evie, you'll know the right word. But you know what I mean? That sometimes you have to do that, and sometimes that's scary. But you
yeah,
know, we have to listen to what's happening around us, and that's sometimes what you have, like, especially when you're pivoting, right? Like you
right.
just have to like figure out what that is.
And sometimes I think having the courage to not do the expected thing can help someone else pivot also.
Mhm.
Like, have you ever had somebody walk in for a job interview and you know within 2 minutes that you're both wasting each other's time?
Yep.
Having the courage to, and I did it the first time I did it, I was like, what am I doing? But I was just so like, this person's great, but this is not. So having the courage to just be like, you know what, let's hold on for a second. I can tell this is not the job for you, but I also can tell that there's something great about you. Let's just like not do this and spend a little time talking about either how you could show up differently for an interview for the job that you really care about, or what do you really want to be doing? And let me see if I know somebody.
Yep.
That's like such a not
Yeah.
appropriate way to interview somebody, and yet it has helped provide pivot moments for me, for other people in ways that to me were deeply satisfying and for them, you know?
But it's
Yeah.
honest, and it's
Right,
why,
right,
you know, and you're gonna try to put them in this job because they're a great person and they're not the right fit, and we all know
right,
that. But
right.
admitting
And
that, and
you want to
yeah,
be selfish because this is a great person, but you're
right,
like, it's
right,
just not why. Why are we wasting everybody's time? Yeah.
right.
Totally. There you are, being creative with the moment, right? And sharing your knowledge and saying, like, you know what, I'm gonna problem solve right here, right in front of you. This ain't it. So, like, let's do this differently. You know, when you say better lucky than smart, if I don't keep listening to what you're saying, I might start saying, you know, like, I disagree with you. Like, this is, there is no such thing as luck. We're talking about synchronicities here. And then I keep listening and you say it. Spidey sense of something good is coming. Something good is happening here. Something good, like, okay. So I love talking about that as smarts. I love the phrase better lucky than smart because it indicates I'm going to use more than just my intellect to force
Right,
something to
right.
happen here. You using more of your capacities, your intelligence across the board to tune into this is a great
That's a
something
cool,
juicy is happening.
yeah,
We
that's a cool
should
way to
keep
put it.
talking or we
Yeah,
should stop talking, right? And the lucky, I love this because it I think it tunes you into there's a fleeting moment that's gonna come and go and it will show up when you don't expect it. Like, what do we
right,
really mean by that better
right.
lucky? It's like I am at the right place at the right time. I didn't make this happen. So I'm like, I can say goodbye to controlling. I only want to be controlling the moments that I can, like putting
Yeah.
that $1,000 aside. You have control over that, but you
Yes,
don't
yes,
have
yeah.
control over the, stock market. Not like
Right,
that, right?
right.
So it's like it's this tension between the two, and the spidey sense of something good is happening. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, and I often think, well, each one of you had guts at a particular moment, each one of you, both of you. I'm not on a call with 85 people, but to just be like, I actually went to school, I trained myself, I was trained to do this particular path, and you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take that leap and I'm going to trust myself that um, no matter how much you studied for whatever the thing is, it's just not right at that moment. And so that's not even lucky or smart. That is courageous. Hey, a courageous being. Interesting. But I mean, I think having the absolute courage to understand those moments and to just do it. I mean, we've all three of us have made big changes in our lives and ended up being super happy about it. And what I realized after the first one is that, first of all, every single year until I was completely sure, I would just, nobody was asking me to, but I would re-up for myself. Can I do this for another year? Can I do this job for another year? Can I do this retirement for another year? Like,
Yep.
is this what I want to do? Stop and force myself to think about it. I think that's helpful because then you're never really trapped, right?
Well,
Even though
I also
people,
think too, like you talk about you doing this like when you're in your early 30s, right? You had tried your 10 years being a professor and all that,
right,
and that
right.
wasn't what you wanted to do. But would you have been happy staying there for 30 more years? Like exactly what you're saying. And I
Yeah.
think that's the piece people sometimes, because this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm trained in and I'm making really good money or whatever that is,
Yes.
but I'm
Yes.
not truly happy with what's
Yes.
going on. And
Mhm.
and go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, and everybody, I mean, not everybody, I would say, at least in my experience, and most people I know, at any age, you can remember being X age and thinking, I am so old now. I can't make a pivot,
Yep,
right? And you were wrong every time.
for
But it's
sure.
so easy, and it's so easy to think you've put golden handcuffs on yourself, or your company has put golden handcuffs
For
on you, or
sure.
whatever it is. It believe me, it was easier to move away from academia when I was making so little money into the next career. But I also know that once I had made one switch in my life, I knew all the time
You
I
can
could
do it
make
again.
another one. And you
And
just don't know it until you do it.
And it is terrifying when I
Yeah.
decided I wanted to sell my company and all these forces around me are saying you can't
Oh
do this.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I had to do it for me because
Mhm.
I am much happier now. And
That's
not that I didn't
amazing.
love that for 25 years, don't get me wrong, because I did. And then right, and then something changes. And for a while, honestly, I was kind of like floated, like after I did that, I was like, oh, okay, well, who am I now? Right. But that
Hmm.
didn't take long for me to figure out who I was again. Right. But it's that whole thing, but it is scary and it is something sometimes you have to reflect on and look at. And so I love this part of the story. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, the immediacy of the like, 1 year ahead is also so useful. Thank you for that resource. You're re-upping your commitment. You can see about 12 months into the future. And then the question is, like in your mind's eye, can I do this for another year? It doesn't have
Right.
to be this like finality
Right.
forever, because there is no such forever anyways, you know? And I feel like this is just such a great invitation for anyone listening in whatever position they're in. If the answer is an absolute F no, there's no way I can do this for another day. Like you have some really good information. Doesn't mean you have
Right.
to quit your job immediately, but it just means I am so out of alignment. But if there is there's a squishiness to it that's so welcome when you're like another year, possibly, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Right.
it also helps. One of my favorite people is from another country. She came here on a fellowship at MSK for 2 years, and then they offered her a full-time job. And she felt to take the job was to say that forever she was not going to go back to her home country to live. She was walking away from a mother who can't gonna get on an airplane at all, so will never be able to come to her. So she'd only see her mother as often as she would be able to go to her mother in her home country. And when I said, well, can you do it for a year? Like nobody's saying you have to do it for 50. We're talking 1 year. All of a sudden, she was like, oh, yeah, and I really want to do it for a year. Great. You
Yeah.
know, it was
Right.
freeing for her in this other way too, which is not about the job at all. It was about the other things that represented for her. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So we're pretty much out of time, but I think for me, what I would like to know is now that I mean, what's next? That was a big pivot. So what's next for you? I want to know. So I think our listeners would probably want to know, if you don't mind sharing.
No, not at all. A lot of travel. In fact, Evie and I are headed to Kenya together in a month and a half, and I'm super excited about that. At
We need to
some,
connect on that because I'm a big travel girl now
I'm
too. So yeah,
thrilled. It's
yeah,
great.
awesome.
At some point when it is a time that works in my life right now, I spend a lot of time with my dad, who's 91 and aging rapidly. But at some point, I will spend about a quarter of the year with my sweetie, just living in another country and learning a language, the language of that year,
Yeah,
basically.
love that.
Um, and in the meanwhile, just I finally am not going to work. So I live in the greatest city, New York, and I really enjoy just spending time doing the things that I never got to do when I was working. I always thought I would, but you're tired on the weekend also and
Yep.
need to do laundry. So,
Well, and I think what's amazing about that is, right, we started off by talking about you learning to save and that being and how you're at this point. And it shows to me that if you do that, you can do that, right? If you
yes,
start early and you're there and all those other things and craft the life you want, and now you're at that point. So I think that's
totally.
amazing. Ending to your story, and not that your story's over, because there's a lot more stories still to have for you.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, completely. But it's fun because, well, it's fun because I'm not working, but it's also fun in that no matter what I do, whether it's a little volunteer something or a big time consuming name your object here, I know that I've chosen it. And so it's fun. And I never feel like, wow, the financial pressure is on in that way anymore. I also highly recommend this. Spend a lot of time, at least 10 years before you're going to retire, figuring out who you trust in terms of financial information. I found a financial advisor after trying on a few and not liking them, but I have somebody who I super trust now. And so he helped us get to the point where we could retire. Um, I retired, ooh, 3.5 years ago or so now, and it wasn't financially a great time. The market kept tanking every month. It was worse than the month before. And I'd call this guy up, and he would just be like, no, you don't have to go back to work. No, you don't have to take it back. We planned for this also. And he was also somebody who's much more knowledgeable than I am about the financial history of the world. And so he would hit me with facts about how long a downturn has lasted, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like that gives me peace of mind also. So yeah.
That's really cool. And so such a great perspective from the client position. Because sometimes, we have interviews with folks who are more in the
Mm,
provider of the
yeah.
service seat, but to hear this is so beautiful. So we have this ritual on the show where we end by asking each guest, so how was your pivot, the one that you highlighted, a step forward for you? Is there a way you can help us tie it all together between the first piece of financial advice you get from your dad to now this, ally in your corner saying, no, it's we planned for this, and then all of it still being your choice and your decision.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing was growing up in the kind of household I grew up in with parents who were extraordinarily successful on paper. Like between them, I think they skipped 5 grades of school. That's a lot of grades. And but so as kids, we looked up to our parents tremendously, but we also thought, well, we'll never be able to be that much of whatever it is. And I think from figuring out what my values were to just embracing a completely other career to um, having actually followed financial advice. I was not a kid who followed my parents' advice that much, but I really did. To retiring early, I think the biggest thing for me has been getting to a place where I trust the experts and myself, right? So certain things you do not, I was raised in a household where you better learn how to do all of it yourself. But I got to a point where I was like, yes, I'll do a lot of it, but also a lot of it, I just need the experts and to be comfortable that I've chosen the right expert.
Right, right. You can't,
Yeah.
you have to
Nice.
understand it and have
Yeah.
comfort. fit. But yeah, but they are the expert, right? So
Right.
for sure, great advice. Great advice.
Yeah,
Evie?
it's like,
Fabulous. Oh, I love it. I just wrote it down. I wrote down a few of these things that are just going to stay with me. I'm going to definitely use them for my
Yep.
own notes, and
I would also say
so
to any
grateful.
woman, which I don't have to say to you guys from your background, but learn how to do basic math. I don't enjoy a single person who says, I was told there'd be no math on the exam. Just learn how to do basic math so that you can know whether you trust the financial people. Learn your basic concepts of how, you know, the world works, and then go find somebody to offload the information to. But as long as you're confident that you understand how it works, then it's fine. Someone else can do it for you.
Sure.
Oh, I'm
Beautiful.
really sorry.
Yeah.
Ding.
Yeah, no, great. What an amazing conversation. Even I got a lot out of this. I think our listeners will as well. So maybe we need to have you come back and the three of us just do a travel show or something. I don't
Yes,
know.
please.
That would be fun.
And you know
Talk
what?
about some of our experiences.
Let's meet in Vancouver or something to do that one.
Sure, I'd love to. Well, I love New York, so I'm happy to come to you too.
Great.
So, Evie, any
Thank
last
you.
comments? Yeah, thank you, Nina, for being here. Evie, any
So
last
much
comments?
gratitude. So much gratitude. And, maybe we'll do a special little episode from Kenya when you and I are together in person. We'll do a little travelogue for
That's
Teresa and the
amazing.
listeners and check in.
Yeah, that'd
Thank
be
you,
great.
Thank
both
you
of
so
you.
much for having me, and really
Yeah.
best of luck with everything. I know that people who get to work with you are very, very lucky.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina Greenberg, for being here with us today. We really appreciated having you on and sharing so much great information to our listeners. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. And remember, if you have a pivot, step into it.